hope everything is okay with the sound. Now it's better. So welcome to this webinar, a DHC Plus talk on the topic of DH upgrades. And it's the first in a series of the UpgradeDH webinars. It is hosted by DHC, the technology platform of Euroheat and Power. And if you change slides for me, please. And the DHC Plus strategy is to work with different focus areas like research and business network support, advocacy and communication, education and training, and to work in EU projects that are cross-cutting, and to generate this knowledge hub that we are sharing today. My name is Kristina Lygnerud, and I'm Vice Chair of DHC Plus, and I will be your host today. I am the coordinator of Reuse Heat, a district heating project, and this is also why I was invited to be in this context. I have been in district heating since 2004, both as a researcher and practitioner. And our first speaker is Dominik, who is the UpgradeDH coordinator. And apart from introducing Dominik, I would also like to introduce his coffee mug. What kind of mug do you have, Dominik?
Yes, hello, good afternoon. This is my coffee mug, and it says, come on, we built our new Europe, and that perfectly fits to this EU project. So that's my coffee mug.
Very nice one. The floor is yours.
Okay, I share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So welcome everybody to this webinar, which is organized in the framework of the UpgradeDH project, which is a EU-funded project funded by the Horizon 2020 program of the European Commission. And it's about upgrading of the performance of district heating networks in Europe. And I would like to introduce you to the project and to some details about the project in the first 10 minutes. So, sorry, okay, I still fight with the technical details. So, okay. So the objective of the project is to improve the performance of district heating networks in Europe by supporting selected demonstration cases. I will show you which demonstration cases we have in later on in the slide for upgrading. And then the idea is to use these results in order to facilitate the replication of these demo cases or of the experiences in other cities, in other district heating networks in Europe. Just for the beginning, some pictures. So this is a kind of a traditional heat generation system. So we are talking in our project, or we are analyzing in our project the heat generation side and trying to propose modern heat generation facilities, something like solar thermal, biomass, and then also heat storages. But we are also talking and investigating the heat distribution system. So here you see a picture of traditional piping, quite old-fashioned. I would say rather not so efficient. So we are dealing with modern piping, modern distribution system without any leakages. And then finally, we are also dealing with the heat consumption. So that's a heat transfer station or a heat exchanger in a household. So how to best integrate the households, the consumers, into district heating systems. So in summary, this slide shows you the three areas which I just presented: the consumption. So we are dealing with the improvements in the heat transfer station, distribution, the different sections of the grid, and the generation, including CHP plants, boilers, different sources of heat. Of course, our systems, the demo cases, are very different to each other. And the overall upgrading process of district heating depends very much on the size and on the complexity of the district heating system which one investigates. Here you see just a very simplified scheme of a district heating system with the primary grid, secondary grid, tertiary grid, and some traditional heat sources like CHP sources. But the more renewable energies are integrated and the more the smarter the system is, the higher is the general complexity of the system that needs to be considered in the upgrading process. So about upgrading district heating systems, we are dealing very often with the old centralized fossil fuel powered district heating systems that need to be upgraded, and a key question is related to the current and the future purpose of the energy power generation facility. So what is this central facility doing in the future? What needs to be considered is also the future changes in the power sector that will impact the power generation facility, but also efficiency requirements on the legislation, and of course the future heat demand, if the grid should be extended or not, for example. The challenges in upgrading and also the opportunities, the potential is that often we have high system temperatures which could be reduced in order to improve the efficiency. There's hydraulic issues, often old pipes, air pollution is an issue. Sometimes we have dimensioned networks and network limitations. So how does the upgrading process look like? In general, for district heating, it has a really high potential for the transition of the heat sector. So I would say that district heating is very crucial for the energy transition. The upgrading process can consist of a single upgrading measure or several upgrading measures. So that depends on the system, on the size of the system, on the complexity, and also on the, let's say, wishes of the utilities of the companies. It should be very carefully planned and ideally in the long term. Yeah, as I said, upgrading processes are often complex and sophisticated, and ideally it should involve all the relevant stakeholders in the process. It's just a picture of another project which is similar, but which is dealing with a biomass integration in industries. So retrofitting process, but it's applicable to the upgrading process. So you have a idea, then you go to the pre-feasibility stage, feasibility study, then you have concrete planning and tendering, implementation, monitoring of success. And of course, this kind of process can be a single process for one upgrading measure, but that, as I said before, can be also cover several upgrading measures, and then the steps are somehow can be also in parallel. One or two slides about our project. That's the structure of our project with the work packages. So in the project we have 2/3 of our projects already implemented. We have identified and described best practices on projects and tools. Then, as I mentioned before, we have the demo cases where we assess the systems and make some diagnosis. Then we develop some local action plans and check the feasibility, and we will come up with financing business models and the initiation of investments. And that should lead to regional national action plans and to replication in other demo cases in Europe. These are the countries and also the cities which are involved in our project. You see also the project partners who are responsible for the demo cases. That's the summary of the partners. So we are very proud of a very strong consortium, including different types of organizations, associations, but also of some industry players. Yeah, it's a very nice and harmonized consortium, goes very well. Final slide is I just would like to make you aware about a handbook which we came up in the consortium. It's about upgrading issues or upgrading opportunities, technical and non-technical approaches. So I think it's quite a good document which you can download for free on the website. You see here the link to the website. So go to the website, download it. It's available in different languages as well, which is very good for example, approaching some local stakeholders that are not able to read or to read in English. So that's in short about the project and some initial thoughts on the project. And with that, I would like to hand back to Kristina.
Thank you very much. Can we change to the slide of presenters? Thank you. So the next person who will present is Dominika, who is a lawyer and policy officer at AGFW, the German District Heating Association. And what is your cup?
Hello, everyone, from my side too. Thank you, Kristina, for your kind introduction. This is my cup. A lot of flowers, pretty design, very girly. There is no particular story behind it. I have just seen it. I have fallen in love immediately, and I had to buy it. And I must admit, the content is pretty good as well. Today, green tea. So cheers to everyone. And I hope you enjoy my short presentation. Do you see my screen already?
Yes.
Perfectly. So the topic of my today's presentation is the standard contract, which is applicable in Germany basing on the ordinance on general conditions of heat delivery. I was told by my colleague who represents the AGFW in DHC Plus platform that you could probably be interested in standard contracts or more legal topics as well. But because of the very short time slot, I will present one aspect of the standard contract only, which is also of particular importance in the course of district heating upgrading projects, meaning the adjustment of prices and price amendment clauses. I've prepared a little bit longer presentation, so please take a look at it after the webinar and just do not hesitate to contact me should you have any additional questions. So first, a few information regarding the background or the regulatory situation of district heating in Germany. Please take a look at the right side of the slide, the right column. You see that there is no price regulation in Germany regarding district heating and cooling sector. There is only a framework of price amendment clauses which is applicable. District heating and cooling companies, they do operate on a business basis, which means that profit making is allowed. And this means also that each and every company calculates the prices on its own, and it is able to adjust the price to the local circumstances and the local bylaws, but also take fully the particular generation structure into account. And it makes district heating and cooling sector in Germany differ from the situation, from the legal environment in other European countries. Price amendment clauses are of particular importance to our members, and the colleague of mine who is responsible for these topics receives indeed hundreds of requests from our members throughout the year. Why is it? I just skipped the following slides to show you this one. The reason for the importance of price amendment clauses is the duration of a standard contract in Germany. This arises of Article 32 AGFW. This is the abbreviation for the Ordinance on General Conditions of Heat Delivery. As you can see, the standard duration in Germany is relatively long, 10 years, which might be extended after this 10 years by further 5 years. And this obviously has advantages both for the supplying company but also for the customer. But on the other hand, it means that within this 10 years the generation structure would probably end and the prices would not be accurate anymore. And therefore, while concluding a contract, the parties must stipulate two aspects of the prices. First of it being the regulation of initial price. So the price to which the heat initially at the very beginning of the contract is delivered. And the second aspect of the contract and of the prices in the contract must be the regulation of subsequent prices, meaning in this context, the regulation of price amendment clauses. And this indeed gives the supplier the possibility to take both the current, so the initial generation structure, but also the changed generation structure into account. And what is very interesting, it gives also a kind of incentive to the supplier to perform better than the competitors in the heating market. Why is it like this? This is because of the general design and the structure of price amendment clauses. And you can see, while designing the clause, the supplier needs to take two aspects into account. First, the costs for production and supply of district heat. And the second aspect, the conditions in the heating market. So both generation and market structures must adequately be depicted in the price amendment clause. And the relevant factors should also be shown in full and in generally understandable form in order to make the price amendment clause understandable and transparent for the customer. Therefore, we usually advise our member undertakings to make use of official listings or information and factors published by stock exchange, which are accessible to the general public. And this leaves also a certain room for maneuver for the supplier to choose that factor which depicts the generation structure, but also the current conditions in the market, in the heating market, at the best possible way. It does not mean that the supplier can choose a factor out of clear blue sky. This is not possible. The factor must adequately depict the production and supply, but there is still certain room which the supplier might use. What is very important, that the percentage share of the price factor covering the fuel cost shall be shown separately. And also, while concluding the contract, the exact date of the price amendment, of the price adjustment, must be stipulated. This is just to show you an example. This is a website which AGFW administers, and on this website we publish indexes, listings, not only to our member undertakings, but also to general public free of charge. And here the customers, the suppliers can find indexes and listings published by the Federal Statistical Office, but also by the EEX, so the Energy Stock Exchange, with seat in Leipzig in Germany. As I have said at the very beginning, each and every company adjusts the prices, adjusts the price amendment clauses to the given circumstances, to the particular circumstances on site, and to the given generation structure. And therefore, there is no one standard formula for the price amendment clauses. But here I just provided you two examples of price amendment clauses. The first one considering base price, and in this example, investment costs but also wages were taken into account. And the second clause regarding energy price takes the fuel and the heating markets, or particular factor representing heating market, into account. The price amendment clause must be accurate. It means it must be adjusted to the given generation structure. What to do when, for example, in the course of upgrading district heating system, the generation structure changes so considerably, so profoundly, that the price amendment clause is not accurate anymore, does not depict the given situation anymore. The solution is simple. The supplier needs to change the price amendment clause. And there are three ways, three methods how to do it. The first two methods arise out of the general civil law provisions on amending the content of a contract. And here we can distinguish first the amendment agreement of an already existing contract. So the supplier provides the customer an agreement, a new price amendment clause, which changes the existing agreement, and the customer needs to agree to it. The second option is notice of termination pending and change of contract. It's a pretty complicated legal term, but it means de facto a very simple solution. The existing contract is terminated. Obviously, the duration of the contract must be observed, and also the notice period must be observed. And after the existing agreement is terminated, so ends, the supplier offers a new contract to the customer with a new price amendment clause as well. However, each customer must agree, must express a consent towards the new agreement as well, which makes these two methods relatively burdensome regarding the change or introduction of a new price amendment clause. The third option arises out of paragraph 4 of the AVB-5 so the Ordinance on General Conditions of Heat Delivery, and it's actually a very interesting solution because it allows the supplier to change the price amendment clause by public announcement, because the price amendment clause is considered to be a part of general supply conditions. Public announcement means in this context a publication of the new price amendment clause, or generally speaking, the supply conditions on the website of the supplier, or for example in a local newspaper, or even in a printed form. If the supplier can just print the new price amendment clause, or generally speaking, general supply conditions, and hang them on the door of the headquarters of the supplier. It's enough. However, we as AGFW encourage always our member undertakings to be very transparent towards the customers and always provide individually the price amendment clause to customers as well. And what is interesting in this aspect, the customer does not have to express her consent regarding the new price amendment clause. And as you can see, therefore, this method is disputable amongst customer protection organization. It's not disputable amongst the courts anymore, so this is an old information. Last week, the Supreme Court of Germany decided in a judgment that was announced last week that it is possible to introduce a new price amendment clause via public announcement as well. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dominika. Let's see if we can go to the presenter slide again. Great, thank you. So our next speaker is Anes from the power utility of one of the demo sites in the project. Welcome. And what is your mug looking like?
Thank you, Kristina, for this introduction. This is my today cup of coffee. This cup is a souvenir from one of my projects, so I like it, but unfortunately I already finished my coffee today during the preparing for the webinar, so I can immediately switch to the presentation.
Great.
You already see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. One of the topic of today webinar is the issue of involvement of the stakeholders in upgrading district heating projects. So I will start with some general recommendations on setting up local working groups that should comprise some stakeholders. And those general recommendations were actually defined within UpgradeDH project within work package 3. And it should be emphasized at the beginning that for the success of an upgrading process of a DH system, it is important that all stakeholders are involved from the very beginning of the project to ensure acceptance of the future project, but also institutional and technical support in all phases of the development and the realization of an upgrading DH project. Local working group can be set up from the scratch as a new one group, or can be used some existing group if already exists, and it depends on the specific situation in particular case. Also, some subgroups can be selected for addressing more specific issues, while especially in smaller countries use synergies with groups from the regions or acting on a national level might also help. Relevant stakeholders that should be invited for participation in a local working group for upgrading DH projects are first of all from supply and demand side heat suppliers, and this is heating grid operators, municipalities, housing association, building owners, and end users. But also some other stakeholders can be added to the local working group. For example, for practical purpose, some supporting actors as city planners, experts in heat planning, energy agency, or even research and development organization. Also, political support can help. So some politicians might be invited, or local policy makers from the city, or some associations. In general, it is important to cover the whole value chain of heat generation, heat distribution, and heat use, but also cover legislation and administration issue. The main achievements and recommendations that can expected from the work of local working group is the cooperation and discussion between different authorities involved in district heating upgrading issues, then increase of market activities and new projects, then of course political support for the development and realization of an upgrading DH project, profiting from the interaction with the other groups from the region, but also from the cooperation with the experts from abroad. And of course, sharing knowledge is expected through some workshops or training courses that can be organized within the projects. Let's see how a local working group was established for Tuzla district heating system, which is one of the demo cases of UpgradeDH project. This Tuzla district heating system is in a city of Tuzla, placed in northeast part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is a city of 170,000 inhabitants, a pretty large district heating system of 220 megawatts of thermal energy installed, and 170 kilometers of distribution network. Heat producers is CHP Tuzla, owned by a company which I work for. It is Elektroprivreda power utility of Bosnia and Herzegovina, state company. Heat is supplied to a distribution utility owned by City of Tuzla. So we can already recognize some 4 stakeholders involved in the project of Tuzla district heating upgrade. So 3 members come from development department of power utility Elektroprivreda. 2 members comes from CHP Tuzla. 4 members come from distribution utility company, subgroup which already existed in that company and which performed a first phase of modernization of district heating distribution network in recent years. Then we have a member from City Council, which is very important. Then a representative of consumers associations and as end users representative, and 1 member from building managers. We also have a associated member from Thermal Engineers Association in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is actually presidency of that association, which is a sort of connection between this Tuzla district heating upgrade project and some other district heating systems in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which can be used as replication cases in some future period. Many meetings held during 2018 and 2019 of this local working group. And we also identified a core local working group composed from the subgroups from power utility Elektroprivreda and the distribution utility company. And in between those full meetings, we held many meetings of this core team, and we are in a continuous communication almost on a weekly basis, which is important for the success of one upgrading district heating project. We also benefiting from the advice from expert partners from abroad. This is an example of cooperation with AGFW experts, which contributed to the resolving of hydraulic issue in district heating Tuzla system. Another example is cooperation with Optit from Italy in optimization of operation of cogeneration units in Tuzla power plant. And we also established a cooperation on a regional level. This is a recent joint visit of University Zagreb group and our local working group for Tuzla district heating system to the CHP Zagreb East, where they installed thermal storage, and that option of thermal storage is upgrading option both for University Zagreb demo case, CISAC, and our demo case, Tuzla. So to summarize some main outcomes from the work of local working group for Tuzla district heating upgrade project is develop discussion and preliminary identification of possible upgrading measures for the systems covering all generation, distribution, and consumption sites. Then identification of possible measures, prioritizing of the measures, and final selection of the measures that can be further elaborated and implemented. And they are optimization of CHP operation, thermal storage integration, solar thermal collectors integration, then co-firing options for CHP Tuzla with biomass, then resolving hydraulic issue, installing thermostatic valves, and establishment new billing system. The support of city representatives in the local working group was shown as very important. They understand all issues that we discussed of, and they already actually find some mechanism to overcome some certain obstacles for implementation of some measures, and they're already giving subsidies for connecting new users in district heating Tuzla system. Also, we got support from management of Elektroprivreda, our power utility, as a main investor for this project. Some additional outcomes that can be emphasized here, and as a result of the work of these local working meetings and work of local working group, is already launched co-financing energy efficiency measures in buildings in Tuzla in last year by City of Tuzla, and also by City of Tuzla financing of installation of 2 megawatts of heat pumps in 100 houses placed in periphery area of the City of Tuzla. So that would be all from my side for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Then we change back to our presentation view. And we have one more person left, and it's Borna from the University of Zagreb. Welcome. And what is your mug looking like today? I don't hear you now. Is that only me?
Sorry,
Does
I forgot.
this sound good?
I forgot.
Okay, try it again.
So this is my coffee mug, as you can see, with the motifs of the New York City, and this was given to me by my girlfriend, and that was the first present from her, so it's very special to me. So
Nice.
if I can get, yes. So today I'll be talking about the financial aspects and business models of district heating upgrading. And basically these two, let's say, small chapters are based on the handbook that Dominik already mentioned. So the handbook of technical and non-technical approaches to upgrading of district heating, but also are, let's say, elaborated in more detail in the handbook that is the guideline on the business models and financing schemes for retrofitting district heating, which was developed as a part of the work package 5, in which my organization is the coordinator of that work package. Okay, so to move forward to the first part, that is the financial analysis. Well, it's usually one of the most important parts prior to implementing an upgrading project or any other district heating project whatsoever, because of course, if you want to persuade the investor or the bank to give you the loan, you need to provide a detailed feasibility study, which will show the benefits of the project and basically how feasible it is. So is it worth going into such a project? Sorry. In order to make this feasibility analysis, it's necessary to define all the costs and revenues. And well, the main costs can be divided to the capital costs, as you can see here, and the operation costs, with capital costs being all the upfront costs prior to the implementation of the project, which constitute of costs for planning, feasibility studies, technology, which is of course the major part of the capital costs, so all the equipment and civil works and so on. Then when we're talking about annual costs, which occur on the annual basis, so we have operation costs, which can again be different and also depending on the upgrading project in question. So we have here insurances, cost of labor if there is additional employment needed, then the property taxes, fuel costs, depreciation of assets, and so on. And then maybe the most important part are the revenues. So how much are we going to earn by this project? And they of course have to be during the time frame of certain amount of years. They have to be higher than all the costs of the project, and they can again differ based on the upgrading project in question. So if it's for example on the production side, so the upgrading project is on the production side, then the revenues can be in the form of increased sale of heat or the reduction of fuel use. Also maybe additional revenues from the added commodity. For example, if you are transferring your cogeneration system to the biorefinery and also adding bioethanol and pellet sales to your business and so on. Then if it's on the distribution side, it would be reduced operation maintenance costs, maybe reduced pumping costs and so on. And as I said, these are the main parts which are needed to provide a detailed feasibility analysis. And in order to show our feasibility, we usually calculate several KPIs, key performance indicators, for our project, which I'll just briefly show here. So the first one, which is often used, is the net present value of the project, which practically sums up all the cash inflows and outflows during the certain period of time, the project lifetime, and practically depreciates it on the current on the current value by using the discount rate here. And also we subtract the investment cost here to get our net present value of the project, which if it's larger than 0, then of course the project is feasible. If it's lower than 0, then it's not. The other one, which also takes into account the time value of money, is the IRR, or the internal rate of return. And you can see here that actually the formula does not change much, because it practically has the same look, since the internal rate of return is actually the discount rate for which the net present value of the project equals to 0. Meaning that if the internal rate of return of the project is higher than the discount rate of that we're using in the project, then the project will be feasible. If it's lower, then the project will not be feasible. And the last one, which usually doesn't take into account the time value of money, but it's very easy to calculate and very fast, it's the payback, simple payback period method, which practically gives you the amount of time that's needed to pay back your investment. So that would be it on the financial aspects here. And moving forward to the business models for upgrading of district heating systems, which are characterized by the following aspects, as you can see here. So the strategic objectives, which can differ, of course, if the ownership of the project is on the municipal level, then the objectives would be focused on the local or national policies, climate policies. Then if it's private ownership, of course, it's usually on the increased revenues and so on. Then the ownership structure, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in the next slide, and which is maybe one of the most important parts here. The investment plan, that is the financial plan, so the financial aspects, so the investment plan, economic aspects, revenues, costs, and so on, which I just discussed previously. And the last two parts, the contractual and permitting issues and the involved stakeholders, which have just been discussed by my colleagues in the previous presentations. So I'm not going to go through these. So the ownership models. Basically, whenever we are implementing a project, district heating project, it doesn't have to be upgrading, it can be implementation of a new project. Usually 3 main ownership models can be chosen. So one of them is the fully public model, where the risk of the investment is covered by the municipality and the project is practically implemented by the public utility. Then there is the fully private model, where the project is completely developed and implemented by the private investor. And the private investor, of course, wants to maximize its profits. And usually there's a bit of a problem here that the municipality or the city cannot have any say in this project when the ownership is private. So usually the municipalities are trying to go into the ownership of the system, at least in some part. And therefore there is this last one here, public-private partnership, which is growing in popularity recently, and it merges the benefits of both the public and private partner involvement. Yeah, so these are the main ownership models that are usually used for implementing district heating systems. But what needs to be said here is that when we are upgrading the district heating system, usually the same ownership is applied as is the case currently, because these are already implemented systems and we are just providing some additional upgrades to the projects. And therefore that can also be a benefit to the project, since the financial KPIs, which I mentioned earlier, do not have to be so high. Maybe they can be a bit lower, yeah, since the projects are already running and this is the upgrading. So yeah. And of course, these are not the only ownership models that can occur when we are talking about district heating upgrading. There are some different forms which can be practically said that they are the sub-models of these that are presented here. For example, the cooperatives, which are practically the private model, but the idea is not to maximize the profits, but more to lower the cost of heat for the users who are the investors in the project, and also, for example, the prosumers as an additional ownership model. Okay, so yeah, I think I'm more or less finished with my presentation, and here is the link to which goes directly to the publications of our project. I know Dominik already presented some links, but yeah, here you can find all the publications, including the guideline on the business models and financial schemes, and the handbook that yeah, we already discussed about. And here you can find more details. And that would be it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Borna, for this nice presentation. What will happen next in our session is that we go to the Q&A, and you can type questions into a questions box. I identified that some people already found this box, so I encourage you to put questions there. And in the meantime, when you are writing, we will kickstart this Q&A session with a short poll. And I will have the support from the technical person. Great. So this is our quick poll, and please select one item here. What do you see as the main non-technical barrier to the DH upgrade? Is it related to European and national local policies, the reluctance of some stakeholders to engage in this kind of activity? Is the investment too large and significant? Are the permits too heavy, the processes of permitting? Or are there contractual or business model issues? Feel free to vote. I'm not quite sure when the vote should be over, but I assume you have had enough time now, so maybe we can see what the answer is. Okay, so the large investment is a big threshold, and also the policy level. Good to know. And also then the business cases. Yes, 3 main barriers. Which leads us to one question that has come in here. What are the main practical challenges for operators to update their district heating network? Political headwind, financing, or customer demands? I think this is a good question maybe for Anes to start with, and the others can follow.
Kristina, can you just repeat? Sorry.
Yes, you can also read the question in the question panel on your screen. If you go in there, you see the first question. But of course, I can read it again. What are the main practical challenges from operators to update their district heating network? Is it political headwind, financing, or customer demands? What do you think as a power utility?
What can I say for our district heating business? It is actually one of our main pillar in our business. So we are devoted to the development of and upgrading existing district heating networks, as well as development some new ones. Yeah, first of all, knowledge is very important. Knowledge about the issue and importance of upgrading the measures and possibilities how to improve the system from the technical and organizational point of view, because both of them are very important. And yeah, investments can be also very high for some measures and for some great influence. So maybe continuous communications with the banks and financial institutions can help to get support there where maybe expertise is actually lacking some organizations.
Great. Any other inputs from the other panelists?
Maybe a brief comment from sorry, you can go, Dominik.
Okay, thank you, Borna. Just a very short remark. I can say from our perspective and our experience of AGFW in cooperation with member undertakings that indeed the customer satisfaction and customer acceptance regarding upgrading projects is very important, regarding, for example, the prices and the new prices which are offered, and the legal case which I mentioned at the very end of my presentation. It's indeed a case of upgrading the project when the prices increased because the operator connected a sustainable installation to the network, and indeed the customer questioned the increased prices. So I would say that here consent regarding the customers and a transparent cooperation with the customers and communication is of vital importance. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Borna.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, well, it all depends practically on the upgrading project in question. That is it on the production side, distribution, end use side, but also on the countries in which it's implemented. In Croatia, it would be definitely some other challenges for operators, I suppose, than in Denmark or Germany. So, yeah, just a brief comment on that one.
Good, thank you so much. I would just like to add also from the experiences of low temperature waste heat that we work in the reuse heat project with, that we have seen that there is a lot of policies on other areas, but not always district heating. And there are supports for other kinds of renewables like solar and wind, but not necessarily for waste heat of different kinds. So that is also making the business case more difficult. You don't have the incentives in place maybe. But let's move to the next question. We have a question here. Is there a platform where to find and monitor the government or local subsidies that could boost the upgrading of older networks? So some kind of site where you could get an overview. Does anybody in the panel have an idea?
Yeah, perhaps just to mention that, of course, the associations, the national ones, but also the European one, Euroheat and Power and DHC Plus as a platform is a good source, but I don't know if there is exactly an overview. What we did in the UpgradeDH project for our target countries is that we assess the framework conditions in the countries. So there is a report on that on the website, but it's just a report based on which was elaborated once. It's not regularly updated, so to say. But I think the right address to where you get this information are the national associations, probably.
That is probably correct, but then also I would like to say that we made a stakeholder survey of 8 countries in Europe for the reuse heat project, and that's also a report, a one-time document, but it's for at least 8 countries in Europe where you have this status, and it's on our webpage, so you can look there. Okay.
And I can obviously confirm, representing an association here, that we indeed help our members to find appropriate funding as well, because it's very intransparent and very muddy and very, very difficult for the stakeholders to find appropriate funding.
Great, thank you. We have another question here. Which regions or geographical areas do you see as most active in developing or upgrading district heating networks? That's a perfect question for Dominik, maybe.
Well, yeah, also difficult question, but certainly, of course, like there's some countries that are outstanding in the development of district heating, like Denmark, Sweden, for example. Also Germany, we have kind of a tradition in district heating. Very different is the district heating system and history in the Eastern European countries. So it depends if we are talking about new district heating systems and also the size of the district heating systems, because for example in Germany or Austria there is a lot of I would say small scale, micro scale district heating systems that are based on renewable energies, on biomass systems, on using the waste heat from biogas plants, for example. But that's completely different to the upgrading of the traditional big systems. So in terms of which country is most experienced in upgrading this traditional ones, I can't say. It's difficult to say, but certainly I think Germany is doing quite well. Scandinavia is also doing well, and now all the Eastern European countries. Sometimes the problem is that the image is not very good in these countries on district heating. So, but they're catching up. Yeah, that would be my answer.
Thank you. We have a new question just coming in. Is district heating possible in cities that do not have heating networks already in place from an economical point of view? What is your opinion when you have a greenfield investment? Is it feasible or not?
I can.
Maybe I can. Yeah. We have participated together in one previous project where we tried to develop the projects from the scratch, from the Greenfield projects. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, the demo case was Visoko city, Visoko municipality, where we have at the moment heating on the gas network. And we actually investigated if it is feasible to switch to the district heating, renewable district heating network. It was scaled as a project of about, in total, 5 million euros. And actually, the all economic parameters and environmental parameters as emissions are quite well, and the project is positive, and even some financial institutions as EBRD, for example, already sent their interest for investment in that project. So yes, it is possible to get feasible projects from Greenfield in the cities and places where there is no, at the moment, existing distribution network.
Yeah, I agree.
Borna, you wanted to add?
Yeah, sorry. I agree with Anas. I mean, I also worked with him on that project. So we had the same analysis done in Croatia for a smaller city or a rural city, which doesn't have such a high heat demand density in the city center, but it still proved to be very feasible. And then if you're looking at larger cities with more densely populated central areas, it's really feasible, because yeah, that's where district heating is the most feasible, in the densely in the areas within high heat demand densities. So.
And maybe also we can add that it is a value of green that sometimes a city looking towards future goals puts a higher value on than the economical goals. So it depends also on the investor, right? So we see a shift towards investors with a long-term perspective, like pension funds and things like that, also going towards this sector. So that means that the NPV that you talked about, Borna, and the IRR become maybe a little less interesting because you can top it off with this green value. On that note, we have another question here. Are most of the DH upgrading projects rather driven out of an environmental interest or out of an economic interest? I guess this is ending here in the middle. But that I think is a very relevant question, which we already more or less addressed, right?
Yeah, perhaps a short answer on that. Again, it depends on when the district heating system was set up. So I think in previous times there was just a lot of heat available from, for example, big CHP plants, and it was just clever to use this heat and distribute it, and that was economically very feasible. But the newer systems and the systems of today are, I would say, more driven by environmental concerns. But of course, you always need the right stakeholders or decision makers on the city level, municipality council or whatsoever, that really push the process forward and drive it. And sometimes, of course, if you don't have these motivated persons, then it just doesn't happen.
I think we have room for one more question, and there is one more question left, so that is perfect. The question is, do you see global warming reducing the number of or the demand of heat then as a challenge to develop or upgrade district heating networks? What do you say on that?
I can say that actually it can be driver for further upgrading DH projects because we actually obtain some primary energy savings by upgrading DH projects and also reduce CO2 emissions. So actually those projects are in line with all mitigations measures for climate change.
Okay.
Perhaps to add just a few sentences, I fully agree with that it's rather a driver. Of course, like the temperatures are increasing in general, and the winters in Central Europe are getting milder and milder. And that's the one side. The other side is that usually the building stock or the buildings are getting more efficient and more insulated. So it's a challenge. I would say that from the economical viewpoint, district heating systems are economical feasible in the very long term, perhaps. Yeah, but I think within the next 50 years there is no problem at all. I see more a challenge, the competition to other sources, like of course the extension of the natural gas grid, which is really could be a barrier to the extension of district heating. At the moment, of course, with the Corona crisis, while the heating oil price dropped down dramatically, and that will also impact the efficiency of renewable heating and also of district heating. Yeah, just to add on what Anne said.
Thank you so much. I think,
and if I may, just one minor comment. So I think that's exactly the reason why we need to upgrade our district heating networks, because we want to go towards the fourth, and now even they're talking about the fifth generation of district heating, lowering the supply temperatures and using low temperature sources.
So I think that's a nice concluding remark, and we can switch to the next slide, please, to end this talk. On the topic of fourth generation, if you want complementary information, you can look into the reuse heat work, where we have addressed market and stakeholder analysis, contracts, business models, and the role of the policymaking for reaching the 2050 goals. So that's just additional input for you. If you can change to the next slide, please. I would like you to be aware that there are future DHC Plus talks. We have one upcoming in mid-May on financing innovation in district heating. We also have one on digital heat, and then the ultra low temperatures, the 5th generation district heating and cooling. So I hope you will be able to join us for that. And I thank you very much for the attention today. And if you want to communicate further with the Upgrade project, please feel free to contact them in their forums or DHC Plus in our forums. Thank you so much and have a good weekend.